Bill, thanks for the wonderful introduction, invitation to be here. Obviously, you and the New Zealand Embassy have done a great job putting this magnificent policy forum together and bringing back together old and new friends from the U.S. and New Zealand. It's a great pleasure to follow a panel of U.S. trade representatives whose years of experience, I'm sure, gave you probably the best insight on trade, the dynamics in Washington and worldwide as you're going to get anywhere these days. I'm happy to be here with my good friend and the co-chair of the New Zealand caucus, Rick Larsen, Washington State, who's just a great person to work with. You know, our view is these congressional caucuses really play a special purpose in Congress, and it's to bring members of Congress together from both sides of the aisle to work together on issues of common interest. And with New Zealand, it is really the issues of the people, the land, the role of New Zealand, making sure that people understand, A, what a wonderful country you are, but two, what a increasingly important role you play in an increasingly important part of the world. And the timing could not be better for the strongest U.S.-New Zealand relationships to date. Because it is strong, it's growing. I want to thank Ambassador Moore and his fantastic team at the embassy for continuing to make sure the presence of New Zealand is felt in Washington, and he and his team does a terrific job making New Zealand extremely relevant in the halls of Congress and in Washington as well. As we look at the congressional trade agenda, you were talking about it just a moment ago. I think we're eager to get a U.S. trade representative in place. Michael Froman, obviously key to the trade issues of the last 2 years, successful ones, and I hope we continue that, and I hope he's approved in June and we can move forward. International trade over the last several years has been actually one of the few areas where Republicans and Democrats have worked together beautifully. Congress sent 7 bipartisan trade bills, major trade bills, to the White House for the President's signature, some of them by record-setting votes. We've built a lot of momentum on trade this year and next, I think is the key to moving forward on that. We've renewed, in effect, the bipartisan spirit and interest on trade. That is why TPP, the timing on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I think is so important. It's a big topic here at the forum. It's a big topic in Congress as well. Both the U.S. and New Zealand have a lot of time and a lot of resources invested in bringing TPP to an ambitious and a timely conclusion. I want to say a special thank you to New Zealand for being a terrific working partner with the United States. More importantly, throughout the membership of the TPP, those countries always trying to find a way to build consensus, especially on the more sensitive issues. New Zealand, my view, in the trading world, in my years, have always been looking for a way to connect the dots, looking for a way to connect key constituencies within these countries, find another way to solve a problem. You have a great reputation in that area, and we're seeing it again within the TPP. And, as always, you're willing to take tough positions on tough issues at tough times, which is, I think, critical to the success of an ambitious agreement. I'm excited about the TPP because it really is an opportunity to create a 21st century trade agreement, not one between one country or 4 or 5 of them, but to create, in effect, a plug-and-play architecture where we set the standards and rules, where future countries, if they can meet those standards and rules, can plug into them. Makes it a tougher agreement to negotiate up front, but it provides much more value going forward. Trans-Pacific Partnership should be the most ambitious trade agreement the world has ever seen. I know it's not easy to negotiate. A lot of differences remain, even among our 2 countries, but the goal is worthy of all the resources that we can muster and invest in this endeavor, because at the end of the day, we're going to create the ability to create good paying jobs and new opportunities in throughout the Asia-Pacific region, critical, obviously, to the United States and New Zealand as well. My sense, the pace of negotiations are picking up. They have settled on agreements on key areas, but we still have the most difficult ones left to do. I think one of the keys is to make sure that those countries entering this, rather than slowing down the negotiations, in effect, this is an on-ramp, and their responsibility to accelerate and merge with the agreement that's already in place, accepting what's already being negotiated and being a good partner going forward on the remaining issues as well. So for me, it is key that the addition of any new negotiating partner not slow us down. Final point, we have some work here to do in Congress to make sure we don't slow this agreement down. Trade Promotion Authority, the ability for any president to be able to negotiate these agreements, guaranteeing our partners a timely up or down vote is critical. It is currently not in place. It should be. This is a high priority for Chairman Camp, Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and Chairman Devin Nunes, who now heads the Trade Subcommittee. This is a very high priority for them and our conference. I think there's been some good discussions at the staff level, some good framework foundation laid on this. It's been more than 10 years since we've identified what the key negotiating objectives should be from Congress to the White House as these negotiate these agreements. I think it's absolutely critical in order for us to have the best agreement for TPP or for the transatlantic agreement that we have in place Trade Promotion Authority so that our partners can negotiate knowing that they have they have full faith in a timely and up or down vote. I'll close with this. I wish when it comes to trade, I wish every country was as forward-looking and as aggressive as New Zealand. Frankly, no one is in your class in that area, and whether it's the WTO, in the regional agreements in the Asia-Pacific, or nation-to-nation agreements around the world, New Zealand succeeds where few do. I wish we could catch some of that spirit throughout other trading partners as well, because at the end of the day, in a world economy that continues to struggle, where some think new trade agreements may be a distraction, I think new trade agreements, new markets, connecting the regulatory frameworks around the world is exactly what we need right now if we're going to grow and restore these economies to where they need to be. So with that, thank you very much for having me here today. Appreciate it.
Well, first off, I want to thank Bill for inviting Kevin and me to speak, and thanks for the introduction as well. And I'll echo in response to Kevin's comments about him working with me. I won't define how that is for him, but it is certainly from my end of things working with Kevin Brady a great pleasure to be able to do that every day in Congress, especially when you get an opportunity to work on trade issues with someone like Kevin, who's so adept, knowledgeable, understands these trade issues like almost no other member of Congress, and it's a pleasure to work with him. Yeah. I want to start by stating the obvious, I think, hope it's the obvious, that the U.S. and New Zealand relationship is strong, and that it's getting stronger, and there's opportunity in the future for it. From increased security ties to emerging economic activity and the increasing people-to-people exchanges, our two nations are taking positive steps to deepen bilateral economic and security ties and to promote regional economic growth and stability in the Asia-Pacific region. Most notably, for many members of Congress, last fall, students from New Zealand interned in congressional offices and experienced firsthand American politics. They immediately flew back to New Zealand, never to return to the United States again, based on that experience. Some people have that choice. Others have to maintain ensconced in our politics every day. Despite that, I hope we can continue to grow those exchanges in the future. I think understanding just some of being able to answer that question for your friends, say down in New Zealand, why do they do what they do, and having some insight into that, not to excuse the American political system and some of the things we do, but certainly having some of that firsthand experience and trying to be an ambassador in that regard is helpful. For many of us in Congress as well, in fact, for many of those who live in and around the nation's capital or on the East Coast, the Asia-Pacific region is commonly referred to as the Far East. Still, from my vantage point in Washington State, the Asia-Pacific region is my near west. It's out my back door. And I don't have to go through Europe to get there. I can go right across the water to get there. And so that perspective from my end of things, from the West Coast, really tells me a couple of things. One is that this region has a huge influence on the lives of the people residing in my district. From the benefits of trade, the increased commerce between Washington State businesses and companies throughout the region. Not a day goes by where, as part of the job, not a day goes by where I have to continually be thinking about our nation's relationship with the countries in the Asia-Pacific region, including New Zealand. I can take you on a tour of companies in my district who every day are doing business with New Zealand companies as well, directly. Every Congress I sit down with my staff to discuss what would we like to accomplish over the next 2 years. In this Congress, one of my goals is to increase economic and strategic engagement in the Asia-Pacific region, nationally with an eye to reshaping national security policy to meet 21st century challenges, and locally, that is from a district perspective, to connect the Pacific Northwest with the growing economic opportunities in the region. And I'm not alone in this mindset. Over the past 30 years, as the region has become an engine for global economic growth and influence, Congress has continued to play an instrumental part in building economic, diplomatic, and security architectures necessary for prosperity in that region and, of course, here at home. And the relationship between New Zealand and the United States has played an instrumental role in our decision to rebalance in the Asia-Pacific region. In fact, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton cited our outreach efforts to New Zealand as a part of a broader effort to ensure a more comprehensive approach to engagement in the Asia-Pacific region while working with emerging partners to join us in shaping and participating in a rules-based regional and global order. Now, establishing and enforcing a rules-based regional and global order is in the best interest of the U.S. I believe it's in the best interest of New Zealand. I'll let the Kiwis decide if it is. Certainly my belief that it is. And establishing these ties will rest on two factors: deepening our economic and trade ties and continuing our renewed security cooperation. The emergence of Asia's economic rise has profound implications on and provides opportunities to American and New Zealand interests. For this reason, building a regional architecture that fosters economic integration across the region is a key tenet of our commitment to the Asia-Pacific. And the ongoing Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, is key to building this architecture and perhaps the most closely watched trade and investment negotiation in the world. This high-standard agreement will more closely link our economies, providing economic growth and facilitating greater business opportunities in our nation's companies. And I remain optimistic that we can come to an agreement. The second factor that will enable greater cooperation resides in security. Recent developments on the security front include the 2012 signing of the Washington Declaration on Defense Cooperation and the first visit in 30 years of a U.S. Secretary of Defense to New Zealand. Before that, in November 2010, Secretary Clinton and Foreign Minister Culley signed the Wellington Declaration, laying the groundwork for major improvements in our relationship. And last year, New Zealand took part in the Rim of the Pacific exercise, and I want to again thank New Zealanders for their many years of service fighting alongside Americans in Afghanistan. Now, these developments on the economic and security fronts are positive. They bode well for our countries moving forward, and there's a lot that we can accomplish together in this region. And as co-chair of the Friends of New Zealand caucus, I look forward to continuing our efforts with many of you in attendance to advance the interests of the people of the U.S. and of New Zealand. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We couldn't have better friends on Capitol Hill than these two gentlemen. They really, really have been loyal supporters. Do you have time for just a couple of questions? Questions?
Yeah, only easy ones.
Easy ones.
That's fine too. It must be break time after we're done.
Well, almost. Anyone? Oh, here's one. I don't know whether we go to Mike. If you just speak up.
So we do have lots of I just want to ask, who are the losers in this whole?
For those who couldn't hear, the question is, are there losers in the TPP process, and who would they be?
I would say it's a great question, because in trade, the assumption is that it's a net zero game, that there's for every winner there's got to be a loser. But in fact, if we open up the competition, if we open up these markets so that countries can trade freely, it's the ability for families, working families with very low income and very small markets to be able to, with much more convenience, a much lower price, sell their products and services into new markets and gain higher value. The winners are consumers who now see, rather than one competitor or two, when they go into that grocery store or go into that market, they walk in there and they have, in TPP, 9 or 10 countries providing their best products at their lowest price or their highest service in order for them to choose from that. I think the winners are companies that before have had to compete against state-owned enterprises, rather than companies of their own type, it's always difficult to compete and win against a government. But competing and winning against another business, that's another matter, and you've got a level playing field going forward. And then finally, I think it's important because this region, by some estimates, 80% of all economic growth in the next 5 years will occur in the Asia-Pacific region. These are where the customers are at. So I think a successful, timely Trans-Pacific partnership will help create a stronger economy worldwide. In addition to new customers, will help, I think, perhaps help bring the world out of, fairly stagnant time right now economically. So done right, I see a lot of winners in this process.
Is this, yeah, the mic's on, okay. I would say this to that question, that there is a potential for losers in any trade agreement and in any country that's party to a trade agreement. But what is that country and what is that country's policies? What are those countries' policies with regards to ensuring that there is a competitive infrastructure in place for that country? Trade policy is not a competition policy. It's not a competitive policy. Trade policy is part of it. But what else is that country doing? Is that country investing in its own infrastructure so it has good roads and bridges and highways to move things to and from market? Is that country investing in basic research in its universities? Is it investing in access to higher education and in training for its next generation of innovators? Is that country doing some of the basics that it is supposed to be doing or not? If it's just doing trade agreements, I would argue the country's not doing its job. If it's doing trade agreements and it's investing in its infrastructure and investing in education and in basic research and its university systems and a few other things, then it's doing its job and creating the opportunity for folks to be successful. Now, what folks decide to do with it is really up to them.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and Congressman Larsen. I am, in fact, one of the 4 interns, and I'm back, and it's great to be back.
My question to you both is, what is the 113th Congress doing in particular to foster the relationship between the US and New Zealand? Thank you.
Well, the first thing is that we're here. We obviously wanted to take time out of our schedules to be here, as you did, because this relationship is an important one. And that's the first thing I'd note. The second thing that I'd note is that the effort to put some meat on the bones of recent efforts, the Wellington Declaration, the Washington Declaration, continues, and Congress has a role in not just setting the policy, but funding some of these efforts that will be taking place over the next year or so. That's something that we can do and do as well. Right now, and Kevin can speak to this. The last week's we've been really focused in Congress, I think, and hopefully after we get through this week, we get out of town Memorial Day week, get back to our districts for a while, we can come back and get some refocus on getting the business of government done as well, and take care of some policy issues that we need to get back to.
Well, I just speaking it to that question from my perspective. Rick made the point. This relationship is strong and getting stronger is absolutely right. So our goal is to build on that momentum, and the work that we do is to make sure, that staffs on Capitol Hill understand the importance of this and the potential and the opportunities of this relationship. Make sure staffs understand them as well. Finding ways where we can create opportunities to be present at partnership forums like this that help build that relationship. And obviously, because trade is so much of our friendship and all, the Trans-Pacific Partnership gives us an even greater opportunity than usual to talk about these opportunities. And I think, Rick's effort in the internship program, we had Kiwi in our office, he had a great time. I think he was mugged the second week he was in Washington. I honestly think that's and then showed up for work with a cut face and all that, didn't say a word. He's tough. And so, man, Kiwis are tough. And so, we're always looking for opportunities to build this relationship. This is a great time for Congress to do it. And if you have suggestions on how we might improve that, we're wide open.
That's great. One more question? Mr. Brady, Mr. Larsen, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for supporting the internship program. Thank you.